Hello everyone and welcome to another game you guys suggested from round 1 of the Tata Steel Tournament 2022. It's Jan-Krzysztof Duda, the candidates for the next candidates tournament versus Rapport, and it's quite the game. A lot of people say that it's reminiscent of a famous game played by Nigel Short, but we'll see what happens. So that being said, let's check it out. Duda with the white pieces opens with d4. We have knight to f6, knight to f3, d5, and bishop to f4. Another London system is on the board, and you can counter this, many different ways, but here Rapport goes for bishop to f5, so the symmetrical variation, and now c4. And this is also a fine example of how symmetry in chess never works. Just for fun, we're going to show what happens if black continues playing symmetrical. C captures, we're going to play queen captures on d4, queen captures on d5, knight to c3, knight to c6, and now, of course, knight captures on d5. Knight captures on d4 and knight to c7 check. A check always breaks symmetry in check because now, of course, knight to c2 is impossible. We have to move the king, and after the king moves, we pick up the knight. Knight captures here, and then the bishop is hanging, and white is just up a piece, but a nice example of why it never works. So here e6, we have e3, and now knight b to d7. And now there are a couple of moves that were played in this position, knight to c3 being the most popular one, but here queen to b3 is a new move, so as of move 6, we have a completely new game. Duda is attacking the b7 pawn, but Rapport, not interested in that, plays bishop to d6. Now, the idea is that if bishop captures on d6, we're first going to capture the pawn on c4. And now let's say queen captures on b7, we're going to play c captures on d6, and we have a very nice center here. Of course, bishop captures on c4 will be played now, rook b8. And after the queen moves, we're going to pick up the b2 pawn, and black has quite nicely developed his pieces, and, well, he doesn't really have anything to worry about. So instead, after bishop d6, we have bishop back to g3, a nice standard retreat in the London, and now we have d captures on c4. So the queen is attacked, bishop captures on c4, putting a lot of pressure on this diagonal, and now rook to b8. Here Rapport plays rook to b8 not to defend the b7 pawn, but to try and give it up. So here knight to c3, and of course b5. Point being that if you capture on b5, we're just going to play captures and a6, and the knight is lost. So after b5, we have bishop back to e2, and now we have castles and rook to d1. So what can you play? Of course, we're just going to continue developing. Queen to e7, connecting our rooks, and now knight to e5. And this is always an annoying piece for black to handle, because you can never capture with the knight. Usually you have a knight on f6 and bishop here. If you capture with the knight, then you just lose material, and you kind of don't want to give up this bishop for a knight, but you also have to. So here we have b4. Very interesting, and now comes knight, or rather, here knight to a4 was played, but Rapport is also allowing Duda to play knight to c6, to fork the queen and the rook, and if this happens, this is what Rapport had in mind, and it's just amazing. B captures on c3, so not only does he give up the queen, but he gives up the queen with check, so knight captures on e7 with check, bishop captures on e7, and now it doesn't matter what you do. If you capture on c3, then Rapport wins the queen back with queen to b4, or if you play something like queen to c4, then you can play c2, attack the rook, and after something like rook to c1, you can pick up the b2 pawn. It's just a beautiful, beautiful position for black, and black most certainly has compensation for the queen. So it would be a very exciting Rapport type of position. But okay, knight to a4, Duda doesn't go for this crazy line, and now bishop captures on e5, d captures, and now knight to e4. Putting pressure on this bishop, but here Duda just forces that. So here f3, the king will be safe on f2, so it's not a problem. Knight captures here, h captures on g3, and now knight to c5. And now after captures and captures, it seems black nicely equalized and has no worry in the world for the moment. So here king f2. Not only adding more protection to the e3 pawn, but also connecting your rooks, and queen captures on e5. We have rook to d7. Now, preparing to double up on the d file. It seems like you could also try doubling up on the h file, but with black having a light square bishop, it just doesn't seem like it's all that impressive. So here a5, defending our pawn on b4, and now rook h to d1. We have h5, and now e4, chasing away the bishop. We have bishop to g6, and now rook 1 to d2, adding more protection to the b2 pawn. We have h4, g captures on h4, queen to h2, now getting ready to pick up the h4 pawn, and now bishop to f1. So setting up a defense on the king's side. Queen captures on h4, g3, and now you could go here, but once the king moves, the queen will also have to move. So queen h5, and now queen to e3. And now, well, it's just not easy for black to find a move. You should probably try to open up the position with f5, since the well, you have to try to attack the black king. But here Rapport plays on the queen side. He plays c5. Now king to g2. Now the bishop can move, so the queen no longer can access the king side. We have a4, and now bishop to c4, setting up a blockade on the queen side. We have a3 and b3. And now look at this. The queen side completely blocked. The d file, the only open file on the board, or rather, okay, the h file is also open, but the d file is completely in white's control. You are never putting anything on that d8 square to challenge white's rooks. And what can black do here? Well, queen to e5. You can go here or here to guard the d8 square to place a rook to d8. So here we have queen to e5. Now maybe trying queen f6 to gain control of the d8 square. But now queen f4. Duda says that's not happening. We're trading queens, and I keep all the control on the queen side and in the center of the board. So here queen captures, pawn captures, and now bishop to h5. So king to g3. We have g6, and now rook 2 to d3, also guarding this pawn, because now Duda is preparing a nice king march. So here we have rook b to e8. There is not much that black can do here. White is just stronger on the queen side, on the king side, and in the center of the board. King h4, we have king to g7, not allowing this white king to go all the way to f6, but it doesn't matter. King to g5, we have rook to h8, and now rook to c7. Attacking this pawn. So here we defended rook to c8, rook to e7, and now rook c back to e8, trying to trade a pair of rooks. So rook back to d7, and now rook h to f8. So how can Duda make progress here? He tries again rook to c7, and now Rapport doesn't repeat with rook to c8. He actually plays rook to h8. Here Rapport sets a little trap for Duda, because if Duda captures the c5 pawn, then we just capture on f3. And we just win this position. It's now much better for black. It doesn't matter really what you do, because you're either losing the e4 pawn, or if you capture the bishop, then rook h5, check king g4, rook captures, and c5 will be winning for black. So instead, after rook h8, Duda just doubles up on the on the 7th rank, and then now we have rook h to f8, and we've reached move 40, so time control has been reached, but white is completely winning. So feel free to pause the video here and win this position for Duda, while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always going for that breakthrough at the exact appropriate moment. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is of course pawn to f5. This is what was played in the game, and it was in this position on move 41 that Richard Rapport resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So the thing is, you can't really capture with anything. If you capture with this pawn, then this pawn falls, and then everything falls apart. You could capture with this pawn, but then the bishop is hanging. You don't even have to capture. You can play e captures on f5, and if bishop captures here, f captures on e6. Black cannot capture this with anything. It just, the complete position just falls apart. And if you try something like maybe moving the rook to d8, we can just trade captures, f captures on e6, and again the entire position just falls apart. So there is absolutely no move Rapport can make here, and that's why he resigned here. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely played. We'll see if we can cover another game before the start of round 2, as there are a couple of other nice games that we can cover. I would like to thank Andrew Dinihan, Link, Mike Wagner, Joseph Henderson, and Frank Holmes for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Tata Steel chess tournament until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.